This hide laying here on our table is a Charolais bull hide. It was made specifically to make a rietta out of. Being a Charolais, of course, it's got anytime you work a Charolais hide that's on the white side, you'll get these black freckles on it. So what I typically do to split a hide up is the first thing I do is I cut it right down the backbone. There's no use working the whole hide. A lot of braiders feel like that the backbone has a weak spot in it. This particular hide has already been all measured out, and I know that the backbone is the same thickness all the way through, 24 inches in and 24 inches in. It's been measured all along, so I know that backbone's not weak. I measure every hide to make sure that the backbone's not weak. This hide is big enough, even though it's not weak, you never need a string longer than 100 feet. So there's no reason to work the whole hide in a big long circle and get 600 feet. There's no braiding project that takes more than 100 feet. When I cut rietta strings, I like to have them about 92 to 96 feet long, and I want them consistent. I don't like to have a real thin front or a real thin string up here and a real thick string back here. So when I divide these hides up and I'm cutting them for any type of string or soga, I cut it down the backbone, and I just take the old razor knife and I just follow this hairline right down. I happen to have this board centered on my backbone so I can see better what I'm doing. Well, I just split this hide just like this, right down that backbone. Okay, now here's the center of my tail base, and I can see that this part here is quite a bit thicker than 1 or 2 inches in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take this hide right here and get in this thin spot, and we're just going to go ahead and cut that thicker stuff off. The guy that owns this hide, he'll make burners out of that, and so that's a valuable piece of rawhide for him. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, you notice I'm not measuring, I'm doing it by the feel of the hide, because I can feel that where it broke over by the tail base, I can feel that hide is thicker right there. So I'm just feeling over there where I want to be, and I just go ahead and cut that all off. Just like that. The guy will get more burners out of that. Now that makes that hide real supple and real nice, where the other piece was hard. Okay. Now here's the base of where that hide would have broke down onto that leg, and it's thick right there too. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to make us kind of a circle off of that, and there's more burners for him. And then being how the way I cut these hides, I don't want any sharp corners. So we'll just take that off and throw it in the garbage. Now being how I know that this hide will produce 696 feet of string coming 6 inches in, I already measured that off. Math tells me I can get 690 feet of string out of this hide if I cut it right. Okay? We've got a few little knife cuts up here on the neck. You'll always have that on bull hides, because when they pull a hide, it sticks right there when that break over that neck. So they have to touch that off to get the hide puller to keep going. So you're always going to have a few marks. These marks aren't going to bother me too much when I start. I don't poke holes in my knife cuts. I don't mark them when I do them. Now that Clint has brought to my attention that I've got some knife cuts, I got another one over here. I'm gonna cut this hide upside down so I can see everything, okay? When I bust up a hide, I don't like this heavy belly fat. Bull hides are gonna have that. So what we're gonna do is we just take our knife here again, and we're just gonna take some of this off. My good friend Lynn Ewell likes belly for button string, but that's a solid 1/8 of an inch thick. Even though it's belly, it's not gonna make any string. So that gets thrown away. And there again, I'm gonna go ahead and round that corner off while I'm right here. Okay. I'm just gonna flip this hide around. And I don't like, see this is the flank. So if you look at this hide, this is the flank. Anybody that's bought rawhide before, they know you're gonna get some flank in it. I don't cut that out before I ship on whole hides. I leave it in, but if you're gonna cut this hide all up, you gotta get that flank out of there. See how that knife goes right through that flank? See how it gobs up? It's got a soft spot in it. You just keep going. Take out what you think first and then trim it back until it gets hard. See how that started gliding through there and didn't gob up? That'll work well when we go to cut it. We've got all the flank out of it. If you use a draw gauge to cut them, you got to have big, long, round corners, and you can't have any inside cuts. So now this hide's, we're getting everything kind of cut up here. Now this is the base of my neck. Right there where that hair breaks over on them hides, where that hair changes directions. You don't want none of that in your rawhide. There's plenty of good rawhide on the side of that neck, but you don't want it on the top. So we're gonna take a little more of that off. And you notice how spongy it is right there. That tells you don't want that rawhide neither. Okay. So that hide's ready to break down. Now the way I break these hides down is I've measured this hide, a 24-inch circle. If I use the crumb cutter, a 24-inch circle, a 1/4 inch will produce me 200 feet of string. So if I do a 26-inch circle, I'm gonna get more than the amount of string that I need. This right here will show that I can do almost a 33-inch circle. I like the center of that hide best. This could be used to make the hondo part of the rieta, so it's a little thicker. This hide's real consistent from one end to the other. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start right here. That's about 32, and that's about 32. So being how the hide's already been measured and I know it's already all consistent, all I gotta do is I just come down here and we're just gonna split this hide right here at 32. Okay, I'm gonna round this corner. And then my helper John's gonna step in here and put the rest of that hide back in the bag, because now the other side would be busted exactly the same. If this is a hide that you're gonna make something besides a rieta out of, this side now is the side to get your cores out of. You could take, you got a deficit right here in the hide, so you could get, the way I make my cores, I can get 5 cores out of that. And that's where you take this section right here is where you want to take your cores. When you make cores, you want them out of the very best rawhide you have, so that'll come off this side. If this was a typical hide to be busted up into bridle reins and Bozell string and stuff, I would have taken 4 inches, 4 cores off this side and 4 cores off that side. I still got plenty of hide to make all my nice string with. So that's where your cores come from. Okay? You want to if you're going to build something, you want to build it on the best foundation you got. And the best foundation comes right there on the other side of that backbone. I split this hide right center down where them vertebrae would have been working on that hide and where that hide would have moved. So I'm just going to tighten this up a little bit. And now I don't have any deficits in this piece of hide we got here that I got to worry about. So I'm going to go back to working my hair side up. Okay. Well, we go ahead and put this all back in the bag here real quick so it doesn't dry out. Being how this is going to be a Rieta hide, and we want to, we're going to work it some more here. Now when you roll those and put them back in the bag, you keep your temper while you're working the other one, when you're working your first piece. So being how this is going to be a Rieta hide, we're just going to cut our Rieta string right out of the hide. I'm not going to go back to the string cutter and make it. Again, it'll have to be beveled. So I'm just going to cut this pretty close to the width of my Rieta string, so you don't have to overwork this rawhide. It gets worked hard enough making a Rieta. So what I'm going to do is I like to wear these white cotton gloves, and this has got soap on it. I'm just going to go ahead, even though it's got a pretty good temper to it and I could cut it dry, I'm going to go ahead and put a little grease on there. It makes that slide through there a lot easier. I find the hardest spot in that hide. This hide is, if you want to look at temper, see, that hide ain't got any water spots or any damage in it, but it's flimsy, okay? So as I work this hide up, I'll keep adding soap to it so that I keep my temper, because the next step I want to do is I want to go ahead and level this hide. I'll go take it to the splitter as soon as I get it cut. I don't want to have to temper it again. I want to get this string all on an even playing field. So when it gets rolled up, gets put aside until you're ready to braid your Rieta, this is already split all one thickness. So when you go to retemper it, it'll take the moisture the same all the way through. Now, I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make is they cut them hides up and they let them dry out. They're going to retemper them later. If you don't do that first split and get it all the same, then you're right back to the point where you got hard and dry spots, and that makes cutting strings really hard. So I use this tool here for making Rieta strings. This donut cutter is designed for Rieta strings. It's 19/64, which is 2/64 bigger than 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and this one is narrow enough I have to use a screwdriver to get the tail up, or an awl or a fit or whatever. So sometimes getting started is a little slow. We're going to start right here on this corner now if we can get started. Okay, so I run these donut cutters a little different than what they're designed to do. On a big heavy Rieta string like this is not split yet, where it goes from 1.5 millimeters all the way up to almost 3 millimeters is the thickness of this hide. It's so thick, if you hit a dry spot and you pull it like a normal donut cutter, you'll crease your rawhide. It just doesn't have enough give to bend that strong at this temper. So I push them. Then if you do hit a little spot that's pretty hard and you can't push, just go ahead and pull it till you get past that spot and go back to work. So I had some deficits in that string, so I intentionally cut it off. But once you get started, you can just rock and roll. Like we'll just get started here on this corner. Again, see, that's pretty spongy, so you gotta move around here and find a spot, because it's thicker on one side than the other, just enough to change the temper. And you put some more soap on her. Don't be worrying about putting too much soap on it when you're busting it off, because you're trying to save your temper so you can run split it when you get it done cut. I'm just trying to get enough I can get a hold of it that way. I'm in that thicker spot that's hard to get through. You just pull her like that. And if you got to pull to the inside of the hide when you're pulling like that. These narrower ones, boy, just a little bit of deficit, you'll cut your string. So you gotta be real careful and just keep pulling to the inside of the hide. And the minute it kind of starts sailing, then go back to pushing. The pushing part is better than the pulling part. When you're coming around the corner, you're pulling out to drive that cutter in to that circle. Just trim that off and make it smooth so it's not on your string. When you're using one of these, any deficit in this hide will be in that string. So if it's got a little hump or bump, it'll either be a little, it'll have that hump or bump. And when it does that, it makes the string narrower, so it's not good to braid. We've got a little bit of room, trim this string down, but not very much. We got a 64th on each side we can straighten it with if we wanted to. Most of the time, you don't even have to do that. You just, you can just keep your string the same width, but it's like a little tiny guy like that right there will be in your string and you don't got room to cut it off later. So you got to be careful about that. Trim that up. You just got to keep that soap on it. You got to keep that interior moisture that you put in it by tempering it. And I don't ever let my rawhide. I don't, like, if it's in the stock tank tempering, when I look at it, if it's starting to change color, it's got too much water in it. It just has to be enough moisture in this hide when you roll it up and temper it, just enough to roll it up. And I wipe all the water off with a rag before I put it in the bag. This hide right here, as thick as it is, probably would have took about 30 minutes in the stock tank. Thin cow hides that are string hides, stuff like that, 10 minutes in the stock tank's all I want. I wipe all the water off, roll them up, put them in garbage sacks. 4 hours after they go in the garbage sacks, I get them back out. I turn the garbage sacks wrong side out, wipe all the water off that. I don't want any condensation on it because that'll create white spots or wet spots in your hide. If it takes 3 days for it to relax over there in the garbage sack, that's okay, it ain't gonna mold. I've had them in, this rawhide right here was probably in the garbage sacks for 5 days before it got soft enough to roll it, because it was such a thick, heavy hide. One of the biggest mistakes I think people make from the very beginning is they use too much water and not enough soap. That soap will come right off when you're done braiding, and the whole time it helps hold that moisture. If we had a spray bottle and we spray a little water on this hide right now, them edges will start rolling up. Everywhere that water touched will create a weak spot, which makes it harder and harder to cut. So you just keep your soap on it. See how supple she's coming back, just that soap, that's all you need. That soap's gonna seal that interior moisture in there so you can cut that hide. And this little donut cutter we're using, it's just too much of a struggle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take it off. The next size donut cutter means we gotta run it through this string cutter one time and split it in half to get our Rieta string. This circle's still big enough to make a long enough string. So instead of fighting that with them little humps and bumps I'm fighting with, I'm just gonna go to 2 times that size. And that's what this one is. It's 2 times the size of that one. So then it actually works a little bit better because it's a little bigger. It's a little more forgiving. And it's the same way, I just put it in there. Now when I hit them hard spots, them thicker hard spots or them any deficit, now she'll just come along. But now that it's working fine, I'm gonna go back and push it. Even though I can cut this whole hide just like this. As long as I keep that soap on there and keep it supple. Okay, now that's what I was after because we can't do the whole hide. By the time I got to the 1/4 inch, by the time I got down to having to do it with the 1/4 inch, we'd be an hour or so in. So what I want to show, I'm going to hold it up here so everybody can see how I went around that corner, so that rawhide wants to be around that corner. If it gets any worse than that, I call them flags. So see how this corner come around? What I'm going to do, so I don't get a flag next time, I'm going to make this a wider corner. Make it a stronger corner before I leave. And then you just walk this hide right around just like this. This cutter you pull just a tiny bit to the inside and she'll just stay right on track. I bought one of them little rotary cutters from Harbor Freight for 35 bucks. And it lays right here, and I don't use those scissors, I use it because it wants to naturally make a bigger corner, like that one that Clint has. It wants to, when you start cutting, it naturally kind of wants to make that curve. And so it keeps them corners a little better than a pair of scissors. But see, I just go along on that hide just like that. Now we've got that soap soaking in, bringing that, see how it's bringing that moisture back? Just soap, no water. Brought that hide right back to life. That's a little soft right there. We got a little too much soap, so I'm just gonna work my way past and just keep going. If that had been a draw knife, it would have crawled up on the gauge. And the other thing I really advise is when you're cutting your sogas or your strings is go in a bucket. Don't go on the floor, because you're gonna lose that moisture you want for splitting it later. You get to a spot that you know is a little soft, slow down a little bit and push her on through. Gets hard, just pull it. See, this corner here is going to create a flag, so before I get there, I'm just going to go ahead and secret is fix those little spots so you don't get those flags before you go through them twice, because then they're twice as big. You got to cut twice as much rawhide off. So I saved that string by cutting that little tiny bit off. The next time that flag would have stuck out twice that amount. So now you got too narrow a string when you go to the table with, or with a cutter with it. So that's how you do them. They're just like that. You just cut up that whole hide that way. When you get down and you're cutting this size of soga, you're gonna start producing some pretty big pieces. You know, so far this is all the waste we got on that circle. That's not too bad. You know, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll quit about right here, and then I'll just punch a hole in the middle of it and use that tandy cutter and take out a bunch of 1/8" string. This hide's a little too thick for that, so we'll just go ahead and cut it down as far as we can get it without getting any flags. I don't mind, like on a soga, I don't mind if I'm cutting it up for myself. I don't mind a foot of flags to start, you know, the last foot, because I want to test my splitter and get it where I want it. I want to test my string to make sure I'm getting my string the right size. And I use that first foot of flags to do that with. Even if I trim them with the scissor and that string's narrow and wide, when I set my string cutter and check my string, I can use that first foot or so of rawhide. So when I get pulled through every step, I got a little bit of waste out there that I could have cut off right now. I could have quit. I don't mind that, because then I can use that for a test for all the others, and I'm not into the good string. And so it has a job by leaving a, you know, by going a little narrower and a little smaller. If you know, like we didn't have hardly any waste, and that's what I'm after with using one of these, is I'm trying to get as many miles of string out of a hide as I can. The thinner the hide, the narrower the string I cut too. So like if it's a Holstein hide and it's only 1.1 millimeters, I cut big circles out of that hide, and I put on my crumb cutter, and I cut an 1/8" string out of that whole hide. I go over and split it to the thickness I want. I might have to go through the splitter a couple times, but I go through, and then that string is done. Instead of cutting it in a soga, going and cutting the next one and the next one, if that hide measures out the right thickness that I want, my rule is for conversation's sake, if it's a 1/4 inch string, I only want an 1/8 inch thickness the first go round. So if that hide's coming out and it's an 1/8 inch thick, and then I'm not going to cut an 1/8 inch wide string. I want it half the thickness basically of my width if I'm cutting little tiny strings, so it doesn't get too square. But a lot of my hides are 1/16 to 5/64 thick, so I can cut that string pretty small on my crumb cutter, cut big circles and get lots of string. Typically I don't send anything much longer than 100 foot out because nobody needs 100 feet. So I try to design my circles and really be careful. These only, I've only got 2 or 3 sizes of these, so when they get smaller, I go back to my tabletop cutter. I took the cutter that Clint made and I built it into a table. So it sets in my table right here. My table's 5 feet wide and 8 feet long. Sets right in the middle of my shop. So I bring a hide in and throw on top of it. My cutter's right here. Cut my circles out, stack them up, go to work. So typically it takes me about an hour to bust up a whole hide. Whether I cut it down the back, take 4 cores out of it, and then cut my circles. That's another thing I do is I don't retemper my core rawhide. I take it out, split it, and make my cores the same day that I cut it out of the hide. I don't want to re-wet it. I wet it after I've got my cores started. I told most of you I take 2-inch wide strip of rawhide just like this. We'll just cut this square so I can explain that part. And of course I'm not measuring nothing, but just pretend this is 2 inches wide. And this is my hair side. Typically I put contact cement on this, and this is about the temper I do it at. See, it's not real wet, it's pretty soft, but I can still bend it. Cover that with contact cement, wait till the contact cement is dry enough that it'll stick, and then I put that rawhide together just like that. And it's glued so it stays. I'll take a rolling pin. I'm saying rolling pin, I use a laminate roller, but a rolling pin's easy to explain. And I roll that, make sure I don't have no hump over here. And then that's stuck really well. With contact cement, you need to make 2 connections with contact cement. You gotta stick it, then you gotta press it. So I take that and stick it all together, and then I roll that. For a good Bozell core, this portion has to be 43 inches long the way I twist to get a 34-inch core. Then once I've got it all glued together like that, then if it's 2 inches wide and I need 20 half-inch cores, this is 1 inch, I'll take 1/4 off of it. By the time I twist it, that'll make exact size for a 1/4 inch core. I split all of this to a 1/16. I've said this before, but I just reiterate. Now I split all that rawhide to a 1/16, glue it together. Then I just twist it just as tight as, I'm not going to do it with this big piece, but I try to keep them twists just as tight as I can when I twist it the first time. This won't come to play because it's glued together. And then if I want that core to be 25/64 instead of 3/8, I just go touch it up a little on the sander. So I cut those core strips out of a hide. If it's for myself, I cut those core strips out of that hide. Then I decide which way I'm going to cut it. If that hide's real long and real consistent here, I always use these. If I want a bunch of little string and it's real thin, a real thin hide, then I start cutting my circles because I can adjust my crumb cutter to whatever width I want. 90% of all the string I sell to braiders that they order 1/8, it's cut on the crumb cutter. And you can take 100, 150, 200 feet of string and go down it with the calipers and it'll be exactly the same. I do that on almost every order. I double check every inch of string or every few feet of string to make sure it's right. So that's the way I bust them up. There's 2 ways. Either divide it in half or take 3 spots. Heavy spot here, middle spot. This typically will be typically, if this is real thick down here, this is going to be thicker up here too. So it's this center that I'm after for them finer strings. There's not a lot of hides that don't vary very much, you know. So that's the way I do it. So what I would do on a Rieta string is I'll write right on here with a black marker. I got that test plot that I talked about in my string. This string's going to get cut off and thrown away anyway. I'll write right on there, front piece, and how many feet it is. Then when it gets to the customer or I go back later, I mean, I keep a little rawhide for myself, you know. I mean, if I go back later and I want a 140-foot string because I got a project that I want to do 4 strings 70 feet long, and I'm going to take it out of this soga, I can look right there and see that that's 73 feet long, and that this was the front half of a cow, or this is the, you know, part 1A is what it's called in my shop. So every front says 1A on it, and then B and then C. But that way it's labeled, and I know where it come from. Now when I get done splitting this, I'll measure it out, and I'll write that number on this here too, once it's split. And then I know, I know what that string is. I know where it come from the cow, whether you're storing it for 6 months or until tomorrow. If you put them all in a bag, you're not gonna know if you don't label them. So Clint likes to put a piece of leather on here so that when it's in the bucket, he can find it easy. I don't have a lot of leather in my shop because I don't do any leather work whatsoever, so I tie a knot in it. So that's how to do it. I'm just going to help John cut the rest of his hide up now, being how we already got it tempered. So.
Nice job, thank you. Thank you.